sine cosine wave, sinusoidal waveform. It's very simple. Starts with nothing, becomes a negative one, and then a positive one, and then comes back to nothing. Over and over and over and over again. There's no chaos involved in that. There's no baying in any of that. There is balance. There is something and nothing, and something and nothing. That is the architecture of God. That is the voice of God. If you ever want to really get close, think of it in terms of this, because it will open up what the Fibonacci is about. It'll open up what the sacred geometry means, what a Merkabah is about. So, going back to the Declaration of Independence, this was the first time that they actually identified the singular creation of sovereignty, individual sovereignty, and spoke about it in the public sphere in such a way that it was a point of contention that they were sacrificing their blood for their position. Only the second time in the history of our linear calendar that has ever happened. So at the onset of the Revolutionary War, we were so broke, it wasn't even funny. We had assets, but we were pirated on the high seas because we didn't have the naval capacity to defend ourselves. And there were letters of marque issued, first to privateers. And those letters of marque robbed us of our national wealth and our ability to have resource. So one of the deists by the name of Benjamin Franklin devised a plan to go to France to borrow money. And France, and when he went to France, Benjamin Franklin, he took 2 other delegates with him. Now, Benjamin Franklin was not your average character in history. Benjamin Franklin was one of those really unique characters in history that had an intelligence beyond most comprehension. And he worked things for his advantage, and his life was proof. In fact, if you read his memoirs, you'll see that he was a philanderer, a drunk, opium addict. You know, I mean, he suffered from syphilis and God only knows what else. You know, he was a complete and utter wreck in the concept of being what was being established as righteousness in this nation. This was the man that went to France and knew things that nobody else knew and made a deal with the French to borrow money. At the end of the Revolutionary War, when the Treaty of Paris was signed, what was the contract that was entered into by Benjamin Franklin? It was what opened the door to the banking fraud that was going to be our undoing.
Well, let me throw in another layer of this. So as this is all going on and the events that are occurring in themselves that are setting up what we're talking about, the structure of today's world, behind that, if you think about the gravitational center of our solar system called the barycenter, and then the solar cycles themselves, are we energetically at highs? Are we energetically at lows? Lower centers, because if you're looking in the 1600s, that was the Maunder minimum. Incredibly low solar activity. That's for right. 2 solar cycles. And then when I looked back in time, where the barycenter is of our solar system, and other times it will appear that the sun is moving off and the balance is, well, affected a little bit. But when you look at the extremes, as far as it can go on one direction or another, it seems that these extremes, 1492 was one of those. 1768 was another one. It was 1858 was another one. Like you start to get these things, and they're just about 5 years before these major implications that we're hearing. Gold has gone mainstream. You're seeing it everywhere, and prices keep climbing. Every day, more and more Americans are catching on to the power of gold. But how do you actually take advantage of it? How do you invest in a way that's safe, simple, and built for the long run? That's where Noble Gold Investments comes in. Noble Gold's specialists are trained to help investors like you to go from confused to confident, from wondering what's next to knowing exactly what to do. Whether you're looking to roll over an old 401k into a gold IRA or want physical coins and bars delivered right to your home, Noble Gold makes that process simple, safe, and stress-free. You'll get step-by-step guidance, transparent pricing, and U.S.-based service from a team that's handled over $2.5 billion in precious metal transactions. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com today to claim your free wealth protection kit. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. And for a limited time only, a bonus for new qualified accounts, a 10-ounce silver American flag bar and a 1-ounce silver American Eagle proof coin. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Noble Gold, helping you build a stronger future. So I'm wondering if electromagnetically, gravitationally, and these cycles within the barycenter flow and also the solar cycles on these larger, more powerful, intense cycles, all are adding into what's happening with the human psyche and how the brain can be bent or morphed. Because you mentioned when you were talking about Jefferson, he knew something else nobody knows.
Yes.
So if you look on gravitational birthing, on how the elite use low solar activity periods to birth in an enormous amount of their ancestry or their kin or their family lineage, the average lifespan being born in incredibly low solar activity is approximately 5 to 8 years longer than somebody born at solar maximum.
Well,
so if you're giving birth to somebody who routinely lives to 99 years old, or 93, 94 on average, versus the rest of the world that average lifespan is 85, for example, like after 20, 30 generations, how much extra time is that of control mechanism on the planet? I'm going to throw those in there because there has to be something with the events, because they're not going to run some of these events and try to put mechanisms in play unless conditions are conducive for that. And I really believe, is what you said with Jefferson, they understood something about the mechanics of electromagnetism on the human, on Homo sapiens sapiens on this planet during this, so government could take a larger movement than they could in other solar conditions. Just
so
throwing it out
so.
there.
No, you are again spot on. And again, this is why we should have more conversations. So you're 100% correct. In fact, in the financial market, I'm fixing to give people a little inside scoop. The stock market was created using the equinox zodiac, or the Hebrew astrology, whatever, the 12 signs, the seasons, and the precession of the months. That is how the stock market was created. And if you understand that, and you can apply, we'll just say, if you can apply pi, you might get like a 99.9999% accuracy rating with your investment. Just saying. People have fun with that one.
I would love for my investment to be infinity, as in pi.
Well, that's the whole trick of the game, right? And if you know math and you know base 10 math, then you can see the lie in all of it. You can see the fallacy in all of it, beginning in the law. That's really the whole thing here, David, is like the construct is the construct and sovereignty is the ticket. When we comprehend what it means to truly be a steward, then we realize that the scarcity mindset is a complete and total facade. That how could we see the world through scarcity when we have nothing but abundance around us?
If you've flown over anywhere in the United States, the flyover belt, like, it's emptied under there. You look at that and you think, totally empty. Hey, can I ask you, you were talking about the East India Company, and I was trying to think about, or the Hudson Bay Company. I was trying to think about today's equivalent. Do you think it would be sort of BlackRock, Blackstone, Citadel, something like that in that arena?
Palantir, Oracle, 100%. Yeah,
Palantir,
the whole daisy chain. There's a website, it's called Revive America or something info. And there's like a couple of graphs on there that spell out the chain up to a point. Like I think it goes to like 2012 or something like that. For example, the king of Maui has rode from Maui to Fiji, and from Maui to, I think, the UK even. I mean, these guys row across the world.
Yeah, you're getting the perception that sea levels that we have currently are what they were navigating through, but perhaps sea levels were lower and different when we're talking about these age-old immortals. If you're going back into the Ice Age period where it's 400 foot lower, you're sailing between islands, not a full empty Pacific Ocean. You start to come back in time on that.
And that's why the people of Fiji and the people of Hawaii are extended family. I mean, it's really like,
and down at Rapa Nui as well. If you're going down to New Zealand, Aotearoa.
There you go. Yeah, the Maori. Yeah, exactly. No doubt, no question. The Aboriginals of Australia. The Aboriginals of Australia are most obviously some form of tribal ancestral route to Africa. There can be no question. If you look at the history, even the cave drawings, in their preserved verbal history, yeah, there's no question. So Willie Lynch was the biggest slave owner in the world at this time because he had all these plantations in the Bahamas and in the Virgin Islands and Haiti and Colombia and where the hell ever he could put his foot down with the help of Captain James Avery Cook.
The
Like
famous
this
Captain
is
Cook that we've heard of that was also in Hawaii.
yeah, exactly. This stuff is recorded in the annals of history, and if people could just take the time to read, it wouldn't be a secret. None of this stuff is in fact, in the international community, David, this stuff is talked about right now. Because right now, the people that hold those gold reserves, they know that there's only two options. And one is the surrender to their overlord or to the sovereignty of man. That's really where we're at. And when man takes his sovereignty back, what is spoken about as the transition in so many different ways, that's what becomes the result. The biblical model shows that the Judeo-Christian model shows that we would usher in the kingdom of God rather than revelations, if you were. Like, you want to get crazy here, let's talk about revelations for just a second.
Well, that just proves that reality is not set and it's morphable and it's bendable depending on how that morphic field or that energetic field can be fed into to change it into something different. And when I say that, I really mean like morphing the field in front of you or globally or within our solar system or the spiral arm of our galaxy. Why would you even be that small? Well, how about the entire galaxy of these hundreds of billions of stars in here too? And that morphic field.
Well, circling
It's
back to
endless as
what,
far as it can go out, you know?
yeah, well, exactly. And here's the thing, circling back, like all things in reality actually do, circling back, what we find is that whenever you actually use mathematics and you switch to base 12 principles, what you find is the majestic order of 369, which leads you to what I refer now. I'm going to be very descriptive. Those of you that understand math are going to flow. The others, well, you're going to have to catch up some other way. Use AI. Maybe it'll help you here.
If it gives
Because
you a
what we're
correct
going
answer, not a hallucination.
well, let me just tell you the right answer is this makes the blue
Go to the source, go to a human.
the right answer is this, that the Big Bang is an absolute joke, and here's why. So in the context of base 12 mathematic principles, reality shifts because you start to work in terms of what is crystalline structures, which can be used, proven by IBM, by the way, to contain vast amounts of data. And when you cut those crystals using base 12 geometric principles, then what you get is a transfer of data in and out freely. That's actually where computers should be right now and should have been back in the 50s. With that being said, reality itself can be measured. You can be measured. In fact, the most common way is through the use of oscilloscope known as an EKG, right? Electrocardiogram. You're measuring your biofrequency resonance, which it has a frequency resonance that it has to be within in order for you to be alive. That is how matter is created. If you were to take a sheet of aluminum and suspend it on its edges, submerged in water, equal proportions on all sides, and apply harmonic frequency within some really wild varying ranges, what you would see would be the creation of two vortices and the movement of part of the material to someplace else. And that's common knowledge in the higher fields, like of thought, that are being suppressed right now. That's really where we're at technologically. In fact, technologically speaking, let's do a comparison sociologically speaking here. Okay, we're going to convert sociology into our scientific advancement, so bear with me. If you were used to understanding the methodology of first world, second world, third world nations, and most people would perceive us as being on the cusp and barely entering into a second world nation in terms of technological advancement, which means that we have an impact within our own solar system specifically. We can affect things the way beyond our own planet now. But the reality is that we have some of the most advanced first world technology available, but it has been suppressed for, I don't know, thousands and thousands of years. These are the stories of Atlantis and Lemuria and all these other ancient stories that we hear about, like the Anunnaki, whatever. I mean, who knows what it really is, but the reality is this, is that it boils down to a very simple thing. God of the Bible is referred to as the Alpha and Omega. And if you know what an EKG is, then you comprehend sine, cosine wave, sinusoidal waveform. It's very simple. Starts with nothing, becomes a negative one, and then a positive one, and then comes back to nothing. Over and over and over and over again. There is no chaos involved in that. There is no baying in any of that. There is balance. There is something and nothing, and something and nothing. That is the architecture of God. That is the voice of God. If you ever want to really get close, think of it in terms of this, because it will open up what the Fibonacci is about. It'll open up what the sacred geometry means, what a Merkabah is about. In fact, you'll realize suddenly that you can be a Merkabah. Oh my gosh, what a concept. Because you are an ethereal being that has chosen a path in the flesh for a purpose. And you've probably done it more than once, honestly, because even in the Judeo-Christian construct, there's only so many souls that are created. There's only so many man and a lot of mammon. So it's time for people to really decide if they're going to be man and embrace their sovereignty as men, not just men, but woman as a helpmate, like biblical truth is, which is our construct. Then we can have this collective consciousness change, truly. That's really what will bring this new paradigm in, because then these things, they're not human. They're not mammon. They're not man. They're not anything that I'm going to get into detail about, but I can tell you that the 100 years is like way short of what the reality is. In fact, I would times that 10, and you probably are getting a little more close to reality.
If your
Yeah.
average lifespan was 1,000 years, not 100, just put that in context for a second. Like, your average lifespan is 1,000 years, but there's none of this control over resources, and there's plenty and bounty for all. So experience that for 1,000 years of a completely different world where nothing would be controlled. It would be available for everyone to use at the same, because you couldn't manipulate at that point. If people get so old, they would understand every game in town, right? For a better word.
Precisely. And when you tune yourself spiritually, using the ancient wisdoms, the mystic arts, not in the negative sense, but truly in the light, when you focus on these things and you bring yourself back into alignment and proper resonance, let me tell you, David, this really boils down to something quite simple.
No, I would go with the chanting syllables, Om, Va, Sa, and bring that energy back in, man.
Yeah, right. I'm very ethereal, as you can probably tell. I actually am born almost in perfect alignment Aries. And my human design is that of a 6'2" hermit role model. And so my personality is very much isolated, but also from the point of being able to step outside of that isolation with wisdom from observation. In fact, I think it's referred to as being on the roof. So I spent most of my life on the roof, watching and learning and absorbing and contemplating and studying. And now that I've reached this new Chiron experience, I'm able to really actually be functional at the level to which I've been brought, which I can tell you, if you're one of those people that you always felt like you had this hidden purpose in life, like you had some bigger calling, man, you probably do. And you probably need to do some serious internal work in order to explore what that is, because you're being called. We're all being called, whether you're a Christian or you're a Buddhist or whatever. If you feel led to something grander than yourself and you're willing to give up of yourself, you should get out in the world. It's an amazing space right now. There's nothing to be afraid of. In fact, we should embrace the idea of change and acceptance for what we can't change, right? I think that's really, at the end of the day, what's most important for people. Trail
No,
here.
I would say that exactly. And if I could even add on to it, if you want to go back into the Yuga cycles, and if we want to talk about longer term cyclicity or something on a longer time frame than just even 1,000 years, you're looking at these Yuga cycles rolling up of half of a great year, a 12,000 year cycle in itself. If you just follow where we sit in today's world in 2025, we've come off the very densest of what would have been the iron, like the lowest frequency vibration that a human can hold and still be alive, literally. What we just came through, the Iron Age, the Kali Yuga, and we're moving out. And if you look at the vibrational frequency, and I think they were more really deeply in tune with these Birkeland currents and how energies flow through what is considered space. It's a plasma, it's electrified. Sometimes there's higher density and voltage charge coming through a local system, and this is why you get solar maximum, solar minimum on like what you call a sinusoidal wave. That has to be coming from somewhere. That's electric, right? You can't. There's nothing combustionable that puts it on a perfect cycle like that. Or at least 11.7 years is the average.
Precisely. How could you have a Big Bang when everything in reality is about bringing chaos into order? And the chaos isn't an explosion, it's just matter. Like, if you really get down to the physical aspects, the physics of what matter is, it is incohesive energy. Now, here's the kicker, but it is really our reality. I don't know who. The problem we face as a creation is the lack of use of cerebral space. Because the pineal gland has been calcified to the extent that it has through whatever microplastic, whatever, blah, blah, blah.
He's building it up. Happy Friday,
Right. The
everybody.
point is that your third eye no longer functions. So you're only using like 10, at best, maybe 12% of your cerebral space if you're living, especially the typical American lifestyle. Now, if you start to go through detox regimens and start to move into clean living and start to incorporate microgreens and all these other wonderful things that nature has to offer us into your life, and you start to bring your mind back to focus and your body back to a point of nutrition and sustenance, abundance, then all the things that you're dealing with health-wise now have an opportunity. That most healing takes place in your mind first.
When they say think out of the box, you're literally going out into those other offerings and taking a look that have been around for 5,000 years as well.
No, and that's just it. 5,000 years. There you go. You brought me back to a point I was trying to make earlier. I get off on these rabbit trails. You'll have to forgive me. The 5 things that Jesus said of the New Testament is really important, and I want to share the Revelations part too, because these are very important things. First, Jesus says that you are sovereign in the Lord God. We talked about sovereignty and what that means, right? But that also means that you have this salvation, which means you can transcend beyond your physical self, because somehow your capacity, your soul, your spirit has proven itself to be man through consciousness. Not mammon, not human, not color of man, but actual man, which is what it talks about. Secondly, it says, after you surrender and find salvation and sovereignty in the Lord, you become my bride. Not a bride like meaning in the flesh, like Christians would have you believe, or other theologic sects, but the bride meaning the helpmate. Like, your whole purpose is to help spread the message of this. Second is you are the ecclesia, meaning you are the church within you, because you're created in the image and likeness of God. Like, if you can perceive the concept of what Jesus is saying, you literally are man, meaning part of original creation of Elohim, or Yahweh specifically. So you have this divine contract already in place that he's reminding you of through his example, through his path, which leads to the second part. Okay, so first you are the bride, then you become the ecclesia, which means the church, meaning the individual, and then you become the bond servant, meaning that you walk every single day in what they would refer, what Christians, Judeo-Christians would refer to in something like ministry. You heard me say ministry. That's what the reference means. And that's what the Bible talks about as far as tithing. That's what a tithe really is, not your investment of money, because God's economy is not money. Like, you know, there's this joke about throwing money up in the sky and God keeps what he wants. Yeah, exactly. And then there's the whole King James, give unto Caesar what is Caesar's. Yeah, whatever. Like, what is Caesar's?
Well,
Well,
unless they're
certainly
talking
not your
about
God.
the Anunnaki and had to give a certain amount of tithing in gold because eventually they were going to come back and get it.
Precisely the point in time at now, they're coming back and control or trying to make the right choice. You just nailed it. There you go.
If
That's
you
it.
believe that, I'm just saying for a mind experiment here, if you were to believe the ancient tales, is all I'm saying. You know, it kind of flows in because there's a lot of pointing to space and just regular media. Like we just didn't do this before. The last time they were really pointing up to space and say, take a look was the moon landing. It really got
Mm-hmm.
people interested in space, right? And then the Hale-Bopp comet, and then I can't remember much else that would have pointed us up there. But now there's a gigantic amount of news saying, "Look at the heavens again." There's possibly something that is a Category 7 or Category 8 object coming in, which means it's sending signals. It's under sentient control, and it's not of natural origin. 9 is the maximum, and they're putting it at a Category 7 or 8 at this point. So why are
Right.
they telling everybody to look up there? Suddenly there's something returning. You start to put this together, and
Well,
then coming into an economic reset. All these things are coming in, like the stock market's going down, the alien craft is arriving, we're on the brink of
yep.
World War III. Everybody here, and I'll point out another thing that I found really strange too is like during COVID, remember every single nation took part in that. All 192 nations or so on the planet took part, every single one of them. You know what I'm finding? The same thing in the news, that every single nation, I don't care where their news media is, they're all saying World War III starting. It's all right on the
Oh,
brink
yeah,
of
of
World War
course.
III. Like unanimously, 100 and some nations are the exact same messaging as it was during COVID. So I'm
Right.
thinking, what is going on? Because we're going to have to bring in the new system. So you need a complete annihilation or evaporation of the old system to bring in the new system but it has to be
Well, it's completely
a lie big
Machiavellian.
enough that everybody will believe it.
That's right, because they're completely Machiavellian. I mean, the whole thing is destroy. It's like that's why it's referred to by them as the Phoenix event, just so you know. Burn everything into ashes, and then they rise from the ashes. They are the Phoenix. That's the technocracy. And that actually leads us back to Revelation, ironically enough. Isn't that fascinating how the synergy works? So Revelation 2:12 says this. He who holds the double-edged sword, I know where you live. I know where the seat and throne of Satan resides. And you who remained faithful during the days of Antipas, which we'll talk about, my faithful witness who was put to death in your city. Ooh, 2:12, Revelation 2:12.
Well, how about a
Big.
double-edged sword being DNA?
Well, there you go. Big statement here. So let's talk about Antipas real quick and who Antipas was. Antipas lived during the time of Nero, approximately put to death at 54 AD. Well, at that time, the Roman Empire, who practiced the religion of Moloch worship, which is where the Temple of Apollonia was, that was the temple in reference here because historically, whether you're Orthodox or Catholic, Antipas was a martyr or a saint, and he was put to death in the effigy of a bull, Moloch worship, which only happened in the Roman era at the Temple of Apollonia, which resided at the same place, happenstance, as the Church of Pergamum, which Christian theologians and Judeo-Christian whatever would have you believe that, oh, that's in the Turkish area, that's near maybe Istanbul, Constantinople region. Well, yeah, until the time of Nero in 54 AD when the Roman Empire was on the run. And where did they move the Temple of Apollonia? To no other place but Geneva, Switzerland. And imagine why the Swiss Guard keep the Pontiff Maximus safe. I wonder. And you're right, the double-edged sword, DNA. And what are they after in Geneva? CERN, the World Health Organization, NATO, International Bank of Settlements, the world's cache of heirloom seeds, It's so ironic how synergy works, isn't it?
Well, it's a large gold repository on the planet also.
You nailed it. You
See, all the
nailed it.
gold's being funneled in a certain location. So go back with the ancient Chinese with me, 4,000 plus years. And, they used to look up at the heavens at the Big Dipper. And there's actually a sect or a cult of people. And there's a word for that, Beidou Qixing, where they follow the cult of the Big Dipper. So they believe the seed point for humanity, they believe there's the Birkeland current emanates from the Big Dipper. And that's the same current flow that charges our star on an electric. If you're looking either at DNA or field aligned currents wrapping on themselves, same, but different.
Well,
All right, so
now
they have
follow.
pinpointed that cluster up there as that's where if you're looking at a high voltage tension line in a field somewhere, it's going from point A to point B, and you can see it with your eyes like it goes to the next tower. Well,
Now do
here
a
they were
little.
saying the same thing. That current flow is coming from the Big Dipper, coming through our regional star right here on our solar system, and then it's moving further afield after that. When you were talking about cymatics there for a moment,
Hmm.
take it out into the Uber, like maybe in the previous, what we consider legends and myths, like Lemuria or Atlantis, that they had gotten the technology for vibration and frequency at such a high level, such largeness that when deployed, the planet turned into the vibrating plate that reset everything. And it was sort of a mud flood, liquefaction,
Yeah.
earthquake, a resetting event from our own tech that turned on some of the very same principles, but
Well,
in an
yeah.
uncontrolled fashion that affected the top 2 miles of our crust.
Well, exactly. Vitrification of soil. If you've ever lived in the world and done agriculture, you'll know that vitrification of soil is a reality. In fact, fracking is just that. I mean, it's the liquefaction of dirt and rock in order to produce access to pockets of natural gas. So soil vitrification is very real. And you think about the earth and the fact that if you do perceive the world through its actual reality, which is just a specific resonance frequency, well, then if that gets too off kilter, like if the pole starts to shift a little bit or does a quick snap, or there's some sort of sporadic solar event, which obviously those happen. We've seen, like tons of history on that. Well, then of course, you're gonna have these little hiccups here and there that are gonna be evidence. All that could potentially be an embellished reality, of course, because like it could be that to that extent. Who knows for sure? Because the history in an event like that would be erased, and you see it. For example, if you look on the eastern seaboard of South America. What you see is these things taking place on a very regular basis. It's happened in Hawaii, it's happened in Africa, it's happened all over the world on a small scale, on a microcosm. And so if you look at that over the geologic record, what you see is that you have impacts. Like, for example, let's say you have a celestial impact on this planet. Can you imagine what that does to the frequency resonance of this planet and what it would cause on the opposite side of the globe in vibration? Of course, you would have liquefaction of the dirt. Of course, you would. You couldn't not have that.
What if the Schumann resonance is reset by a couple of a couple decimal, a couple pips up or
Even
down?
that,
Because of that, that would change humanity as well. If it was a permanent
absolutely,
reset, not just a
absolutely.
fluctuation.
Well, yeah, that's actually gonna shift the DNA. Absolutely. That has the capacity to shift us internally and create evolutionary consequence. Without question. Without question. I think science has long established this. That's why they measure the human resonance so closely.
Are humans more susceptible to certain types of news when it's a higher, like pinging up to 40, and then you're slinging a whole bunch of different news articles to try to ride on top of that, whatever
Well,
energy
that
wave or frequencies associated with that to get it to with a higher outcome. So you have the baseline, what would be natural, let's call it X, and then you're throwing the news on top of that to amplify X.
It's a simple algorithm. They figured it out and they focus on it, whereas to us it's obscure and mystical. And if you're in one of these religious narratives, then it's something you should never talk about or explore because, good Lord, you'd be a witch or warlock or a devil or what the hell ever. It can get really off the rails, and I'm not trying to take away from the ideology of what man has created as a reality. It's just the fact that at a point we have to realize that it's a constructive narrative and we're in control of it. And we have an active participating role that we can choose not to be a part of it anymore. The
Oh, that's where that
problem,
point was coming back. Yeah, with the Kali Yuga, we're rising in vibrational frequency every day. So older systems that used to hold are not holding any longer because every day we become vibrationally lighter. But
that's
that
right.
last for a lot of these systems were set is when we were descending into the Iron Age and then experience the bottom of it at the lowest vibration a human can attain.
Yeah.
And you go below that and there's no more humanity. Humans can't hold in that resonance, but you're coming back up off of that. So all those systems formed in the 4, 5, 800,000 years at that iron density. Now that we're getting something more vibrationally lighter than iron, it's difficult. They have to create entire new systems to try to pre-trap. It's almost like Gretzky skating over to the puck and they're putting something in that they know could last for another couple hundred years or 100 years.
And it's that, this is an opinion, and it is an opinion, but at the same time, it's also the reality that I deal with on a regular basis, and it is very real, and it is happening, and we do have to really focus in on what our outcomes are supposed to be rather than what we're traumatized by, the fear. We have to get more in sync with realizing that truth is not about what we say and our perception of reality, but and not our intent even, but it's about the outcomes, and the best outcomes come from when you answer your calling in this world.
They're actually overlaying your reality.
And
So,
Prince said it best: "Party like it's 1999. Have fun
oh
with
yeah.
it. Don't be in fear of it. Just live and experience." Yeah.
1999. Well, that's my best friend's voice.
No doubt. God bless Prince and his
All right,
creative
everybody. We'll see
ability.
you next time. Bye for now.